vocabulary and things. So sometimes we'd have to analyze songs or cook a dish following a Spanish recipe and then bring it to class.
Yeah, I think songs are really a good way to learn languages because you make a emotional connection with the language. So, for example,
Exactly.
you just like start try to study grammar or vocabulary, you may know emotional connection. And it's just like try to make input of data in your brain.
Just focusing on, oh, I'm going to learn this much vocab and this is a table, this is a pen. It doesn't really stick with you. There's no if there's a lack of an emotional
Yeah.
connection to what
Well,
you're doing,
yeah.
it's going to be a very difficult journey. You can really test your fluency by listening to the radio, because this is when people speak at full speed, not like podcasts. Podcasts, they can slow down for you to understand and stuff. Do you understand people on the radio? If you do, chances are you can communicate normally if you were in the country. If you don't, then you need a bit more practice, maybe.
Yeah, bro. I mean, like, I feel in the UK, it's really hard to get integrated into, into social native circles.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about it?
Tough question.
Not because I mean, like, probably I think it's not because of racial issues or whatever. I think it's more
Yeah.
about like because they speak in such a way that they are not comfortable talking to foreigners. Foreigners are not comfortable talking to them. So it's like there's kind
Mhm.
of a communication barrier which prevents people from. Yeah, I think it's more about that, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the main point, that if they don't feel understood, then it creates sort of an awkward tension, and you don't, instead of focusing on chilling together, you're focusing on trying to speak to one another. But that might be one aspect of it. But there's still groups of people that don't mind like spending the extra effort to try and get you to understand and involve you more in the group. I guess it depends on how many common interests you have with them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you so I had lots of sort of British people in my course.
Well.
So one common interest was obviously getting together and studying, and there was no problem with that. But then socializing, it was a bit more different because they like to party and stuff. I prefer to do other activities. So I guess the there's multi-level answers to that question, where
Yeah.
if you have common interests, it's easier. Or if for example, British people who study languages, they're also more interested in getting to know people of other cultures. So
Yeah.
it really depends, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, I understand your answer, honestly. Okay, I'm going to have a look at the things that I've
One
been
second, I'm just charging my
writing
phone.
down. Okay, the other question. Okay, how many I mean, in the future, are you planning to learn a new language, or are you just with the languages that you know, it's okay for you till the end of your life?
Another good question. Right
Yeah.
now, I'm just focused on keeping my level for the languages that I do know,
Yeah.
purely because I'm finishing a degree, I'm applying for jobs, I'm sort of reaching another milestone in my life where I can't distract myself with starting to learn another language. So I'm
Mhm.
just consolidating foundations now. If I do learn another language, though, I would mostly do it from a practical point of view. In other words, I'd look at so for example, the language is spoken in the UN, or
Chinese.
what, yeah, basically. So if Chinese keeps, or like if China keeps becoming sort of a rising power over the next few years, then it would make sense to learn it,
Yeah.
just so I'm more versatile and more. It would help me in my career, I think so. I wouldn't see a reason why not to try.
Yeah, bro, indeed. Like, well, I started to learn French, so I'm going to be like a few years I mean, just like trying to improve French, German, keeping my English, my Spanish.
Hmm.
But when I'm done with these languages to some extent, I'm going to I think I'm going to learn Chinese because I feel like China is getting more and more important economically.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, overall. So yeah, bro. One question, like, when do you think you are done with learning one language? Yeah. Or you say, oh, okay,
Done with learning one language.
yeah, I mean, like, for example, like, yeah, I don't know, like, how do you say, okay, for example,
Like
me
you
right
mean
now,
you're established in a language or you're ready.
yeah, but
Like you're.
how do you know, like, when you need to, when you are able to move on to the next language? How do you,
I think it depends on your personal goals, to be honest. So, for example, you can be someone who just wants to know a bit of everything because you want to, when you socialize, be able to like say jokes in different language or like relate to people from different cultures and speak to them a bit of their language, even if you're not super fluent, to sort of create that connection on a different level. For example, when you and I first met, obviously when we speak in English,
yeah,
there's that sort of formal university. I'm helping you register with the university type of context. But when we switched to Spanish, then we spoke about football, about going to play with your friends, and sort of it was a more informal, more relaxed
yeah,
setting. And so I think speaking different languages gives you that ability to connect with people on a different level. So if your goal is to just be able to like tell jokes and stuff, then obviously I don't know, an A1 level in that language is enough for you, or a B1. However, if you want to be fluent in a language, so then fluency is debated in terms of what does it mean to be. Sorry, yeah. So I was saying, if you want to be fluent in those languages, then you're looking at a different bar. You're looking at being able to understand most of a conversation in a given language and reply adequately while being understood. So that doesn't mean that you know all of the most complex vocabulary and you can write like super detailed literary essays in that language. No, it means you can go to that country and get by and sort of get your way around and do the things that you need to do in the language of the country, in my opinion.
yeah.
So obviously, if
Even
you
if your speech is not perfect, maybe you need to you get caught out from time to time. Maybe there are some words that you don't pronounce really well.
exactly,
Yeah,
but you can still, in my opinion, you can still be fluent even if you're not perfect. So I think when you came to England, you were fluent, despite the fact that your accent was different and you didn't know. You sometimes had to like think and translate things.
yeah,
I could understand you. You could understand me, and you can understand like people who didn't have a thick accent. So that's
yeah,
essentially called being fluent, in my opinion. And so if your level is to be fluent in a language, then again, aiming for a B2, for example, is enough for you. And then you can move on to the next language where you want to reach that level. And so you can be conversational in many languages.
yeah,
However, if your aim is mastery, then
yeah.
your language learning is never going to stop because you're always
Yeah,
going to be
bro.
learning new words, always going to be learning new phrases, always going to be consuming content and improving the way you write, improving the way you read, improving the way you speak. Um, because
Yeah,
obviously learning a language is multifaceted. So if your aim is mastery, then I think you'd never stop learning in language.
yeah, that happened. That's what is happening to me right now, to be honest. It's like I always keep learning new words. Even if I learn a lot of words, I keep learning, bro. It's amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
every
The
all,
rate the rate might be slower,
yeah.
but you're still learning.
Yeah, so what do you think? I mean, I think everyone should strive for mastery, to be honest. I mean, unless you want to go on holidays, it's kind of you really want to internalize that language into your brain and never forget. I think the best way is to always, I mean, because the lower the level you have, the easier it's going to be to forget that language. So
Just
I
forget
think
it. Yeah.
the higher level you have in that language, the harder it's going to be to forget that language. For example,
Hmm.
yeah, in a native level. the native language is going to be almost impossible to forget the language.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I used to think that if you don't master a language, then there's no point learning it. But I realized that actually it really depends on what you want to do with your life and why you're learning the language. So in my opinion, mastery is a good thing to go for, but aiming to be fluent is just as good in many contexts, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah, it depends on. I mean, for example, you want to go on holidays. It's okay not
Yeah,
to strive for perfection, but
yeah,
you want to really dive into that language and to live in the country or just like communicate with native speakers. Maybe you are going to need to strive for native level. Yeah.
hmm
One question: how important do you think is it to improve your accents?
Um, I think it depends how much your accent interferes with you being understood.
Yeah.
So if you have an accent, but you're understood just fine,
Yeah.
it's just that people would pick up and they say, "Oh, are you from Spain or are you from France?" Because obviously you pronounce like the R's differently or the intonation is different. Then I don't think that's much of an issue, especially if your aim is fluency. And I guess my aim has always mostly been fluency and only mastery in sort of my native language and the language I would communicate most in, so maybe English, because I need to write a lot in that and living in the UK.
Yeah.
Um,
For example, yeah.
but uh, so if you want to master a language, then definitely you have to work on your accent. But if your just aim is just fluency and your accent doesn't interfere with you being understood, then I think it's fine. If you just don't have to sort of, it will change a bit by bit anyway, the more you practice a language, but
Yeah.
it's not a big deal if it doesn't interfere too much with how you're understood.
Yeah. I mean, in my case, I thought that in English it was worth it to invest all the time because the thing
Hmm
is that English is the international language,
Yeah.
so you are going to practice almost for sure English in your career or whatever. So I thought,
Yeah.
bro, I think it's worth it to make an effort because it's the
hmm
kind of things that you get a competitive advantage with respect to the rest of the people.
Definitely. Yeah.
I don't know.
And I
Yeah.
think maybe even in some languages it's critical to have a correct accent. So I think in Chinese, for example,
Oh,
or Mandarin to be more correct, um, if you
I do
pronounce
know.
things
Sorry.
wrong,
Okay.
then it could mean something completely different.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I heard something
So
similar, to be honest.
I guess it can be context dependent.
Yeah, and one of the things I want to really point out is that I really feel like people think that changing accent is a matter of listening and practicing. But I think, okay, I think of course that's true to some extent. But at the same time, I think that you need to refocus on pronunciation
Mm,
and try to try new stuff and try to use different intonations. I don't know. Because the thing is that I know people who have been in the UK, Spanish people who have been in the UK 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, even more,
yeah,
to native English speakers, and even so they have a noticeable Spanish
Spanish
accent
accent. Yeah,
in English. So I think it's not just a matter of practicing and practicing. Yeah, aimlessly. I think it's more about trying to focus on the words. Well, I don't really know. This is from my personal experience, from the
hmm
change I made in my accent so far. It's just like trying to, well, there are two things. Okay, the first thing I think is to refocus on the words and try to pronounce the words properly with the proper sounds.
mm,
Like, and try to really make the proper sounds. Because for example, there are lots of sounds in Spanish, in English, that they are not in Spanish, and the Spanish people don't learn those sounds, or at least don't apply them. So it's like they always speaks in the same way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you try to use new sounds, then you eventually are going to change your accent because accent is the
Hmm.
way you pronounce things. And also intonation. Try to, I don't know, try things. I remember that when I really tried to improve intonation, people weren't understanding me. I was like kind of diminishing my level. Uh,
Uh-huh.
but soon it came better. Yeah. So yeah, I think I don't know, try new things. Don't be afraid of trying new things, and yeah, don't be afraid of people not understanding you because that's what's going to
Yeah.
happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say your accent is more American. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess that's another thing I was going to point out. The way you change your accent can be down to your personal preference.
Yeah.
Um, so you chose to sort of gear more towards British English, and that's why your accent turned out the way it did. Um,
Yeah.
and I feel like a British accent wouldn't suit me, so I'm trying to stick more with American English. And obviously, there's no right or wrong answer in this. It's just what
Yeah.
you prefer personally. And depending on what you prefer, then you would practice things um, in that level of preference, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, in my case, I was kind of obsessed to get a British Posh accent. I mean, it's not like I think it's not like that, but even say it's kind of similar. And but I really feel that, for example, if I listen to a podcast for a long time from the US,
Yeah,
I kind of start to swap with my accent and speak more like US.
yeah.
Does that happen to you as well?
It did definitely happen to me and my sister. So, firstly, my example is I found that when I speak to my high school friends who are from the US and Canada, my accent automatically changes to how it used to be when I was in school. And that was much more Americanized than it is right now.
Wow.
Um, Whereas when I'm speaking to just people in the UK in general, um, I still have that sort of American, so-called American, it's probably an international accent um, base to it. But then I've been starting to change some words and some intonations to British just because I'm surrounded by it.
Yeah.
Um, which honestly I personally don't like. I just prefer to stick to my Americanized version of the English, but it doesn't matter. I mean,
Yeah.
um, and then with my sister, for example, she um, had sort of like me, like an international, slightly American accent, and then she went to the US for 2 months or so for like a summer camp or something. And then she came back and her accent was very, very American.
Wow.
And I was surprised because I'd never heard her speak in that accent before. It was always like slightly less Americanized.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow, the things that time can change.